Ready? Okay, let's get started. There's a lot of chit chat going on tonight. Everybody's excited, probably because you're all football or basketball fans, and you know tomorrow's going to be an exciting day. But here we are at the University of Arizona, at the Stewart Observatory auditorium, where we meet on the first Friday of every month for the Tucson Amateur Astronomy General Meeting. I'm Ed Foley. I'm the president of TAAA. And we have got members here in the auditorium with us, of course, but we've also got members with us on Zoom. And we've got guests that are joining us on social media. So we have quite an extended crowd tonight for our presentations. Now, our presentations are often about celestial objects or some grand thing in the universe that we're trying to bring down to Earth. But today we're going to start with talking about the Earth, and that is our two dark sky sites. Quite exciting, very close to home, and should be of great interest to all of our members, because we'll talk a little bit about where those sites started and also where they are today. And both of them are hopping with all kinds of activities. We are going to start our meeting with a poem, I think. David, are you with us? We're doing something to make David a part of the meeting. David promised to be here, because if he's not, I am going to have to give a poem. So, little boy blue, his telescope slew. That's about as good as I can get. Okay, we don't see David. So that's our poem for the night, Little Boy Blue. Thank you for joining us. Okay, well, we've got a packed presentation series for you tonight. So we're going to start with our oldest existing dark sky site, our site at TIMPA. And you'll find out, if you don't know already, what that stands for here in a minute, I think. And to tell us about TIMPA is the director of TIMPA, Stephen Ferris. Stephen?
First of all, I'm notoriously hard to hear. Can everybody in the back hear me? Are we doing okay? Mic is on. Not doing good at me all. Now is it catching me? All right, we'll have to do it this way. It's been a little while since I've been in this lecture hall giving a presentation, but it's good to be back. I'm Stephen Ferris. I'm the director at TIMPA, also a member at large on the board of directors. I'm going to give you a hopefully less than half an hour presentation on TIMPA. So I'm not sure if people even know what TIMPA is at this point. I have seen quite a few of you out there, and some not so recently. We actually do have two dark sites, and I'm speaking slightly sarcastically, but until a few years ago, it was a relatively quiet site. In 2026, we're in a really good position, and I wanted to just kind of go over some of the highlights of what TIMPA has to offer. One thing that we do not offer, of course, is CAC's dark skies. Someone was out here this fall, and we are up to a Bortle scale 5 now, just covered that. So the good advantage to the site is it's only an hour outside of town. We are exactly 25 minutes from the center of Tucson as the crow flies. I've measured that several times now in my car, and if you want to know how to get there, I have some instructions in a minute, but basically just get on Speedway and keep going west. And eventually you will get very close to where we are. So again, we are at 3250 North Reservation Road in Marana. Technically, I don't think we're in the town of Marana, but we're in their mailing district. Basically, we're in Avra Valley, west of the Desert Museum. We're about 12 to 15 minutes due west of the museum. I think everybody knows where that is. This is a general map of how to get there. Some of you have been out there, know the directions. For those of you who haven't, there are actually several routes out to TIMPA. The easiest is to just go out Gates Pass Road until you get to Kinney, then Kinney until it turns into Mile Wide, and then Mile Wide until it turns into Reservation. And you will see a barn on the right-hand side. As you are headed towards the north, turning towards the barn, you will miss it the first time. I can promise you that. And then coming into the site, you will miss it a second time and end up at the air pad. We share the site with, that's the whole directions. One thing I would say is if you possibly can, be out there before dark on the first trip, because it's very easy to get lost. We do have little lights out, but it's very easy to lose your direction and end up at the airstrip there. The other alternative routes are over Picture Rocks Road if you're coming from Marana or from Vail or from Oro Valley, or if you're coming from South Tucson, you can go over Ajo Highway to Kinney. And it does show up on Google Maps, so if you need instructions, that's always a good way to go. So this is an aerial view of TIMPA. If you'll notice there's the red line there, that is the correct way in. The reason I point that out is that almost everybody misses the last turn, and that's okay. I will do my best to come running after you if you make you miss it. I'm out there almost every time that we have a star party. Everybody misses it the first time. It's too small, little red lights on the right-hand side direct the way in, and then from there it's just a straight shot in. We share the site with the Tucson International Modelplex Park Association, which gives TIMPA its name. We also share it with the local amateur rocketry club, which is also on the north side of the site. And every once in a while, our events coincide, so we have telescopes and rockets going up at the same time. Those are always fun evenings. We had that a couple weekends ago. This was what TIMPA was up until about 3 or 4 years ago, and you'll notice that there's something missing, which is the 16-inch on that site. So basically the parking lot is to the north, and those are the old pads, and the 14 is that little black-brown square in the middle. I didn't dare go zoom in any further, we lose the resolution, but that's essentially what we're looking at. And from the ground, it looks more like this. We have 6 pads. They were installed in 2003. I just looked that up by looking at the pad itself. It had 2003 inscribed on the concrete. The scope that you're seeing on the left-hand image is the new 16-inch enclosure, which was put into, no, around 3 summers ago. No, was it 2 summers ago? Okay, it was 2 summers ago. By a group of us. The concrete was poured by a professional company. Everything else was done by club members and volunteers. We have put out several benches and seats as well for convenience. The ones that are painted need a little bit of a makeover this summer. We're working on that. But that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like with the shed of the 16 open. Unfortunately, I didn't have any good pictures of the 14, which is our other big telescope out there, open as it is. But I have trimmed those weeds. We were working on that a couple weekends ago. At night, this is actually not under dark sky conditions. The image on your right is basically under, as the sun was starting to rise on the night of the lunar eclipse. So there is a little bit of light to that one. Also, the right-hand image is the moon setting just before dawn on that night as well. So a couple of us were out there watching the eclipse all night long. And then the other feature, and this is under full moon conditions so that I could get good pictures. Again, the moon setting just as the sun was coming up, and then Our red lights are something that we installed a couple years ago when I took over, basically as a way to ensure safety. There were some concerns that people might trip over the numerous gopher holes and different kind of obstacles. So we set up a bunch of red lights. Some people love them, some people hate them, but they do keep everybody relatively safe. This is our new pride and joy, which is the TIMPA 16. I want to especially mention John Meade, who was the person who basically directed the construction project on this 2 summers ago. As I said, the concrete pad was professionally installed. Everything else was done under his direction. He also designed the pad itself. We didn't necessarily have the ability to pour that amount of concrete, but it's pretty much a homemade project. The scope came from a club in Minnesota, and I saw Bernie up here. He was able to communicate with them. There he is, and get the scope sent down here. I've heard a couple different stories of how it wound up with us, but we're extremely happy to have it. It is a 16-inch Meade SCT. It's a classic SCT. It has F10 optics. It's alt-az mounted, and for that reason, it is basically meant as a visual scope. And for those of you who are new to astronomy, alt-az basically means altitude azimuth mounting, which is basically means it's just straight up and down. It's not bent towards the polar alignment, which means that it doesn't flex as much under its own weight, which was going to be a problem, but it also means that we're pretty much restricted to visual use, even though it's a big telescope. Other characteristics, it has its own IP set, which was donated separately. It has several different means of controlling. One is the Meade hand paddle, which is available. We actually have a couple out there because the first one broke thanks to me. We also have the ability to control it by cell phone via Wi-Fi dongle and by most of the major planetarium software. The catch is it's a little bit harder to link in by an Android than it is by an iPhone. I am offering trainings on using the scope for anyone who's interested. The next night we're definitely going to be working on that scope. Weather dependent is April 10, and I'll also try and provide trainings on the 16th of May and June 5th, again, weather permitting. This is the 14-inch Gila Monster. This is the original large scope that is on the site. Many of you who have been in the club for a while are probably very familiar with the scope, even though you may not have seen it in a while. This was the original club scope well before CAC was actually a thing. It is a 14-inch RCS. It was when Meade was attempting to pretend to be making Ritchie Chrétien's. It's a modified Schmidt. It is a very nice scope, but it is definitely, the mount is starting to show a little bit of wear and tear after being out in the desert for 15 years pretty much continuously. It was also out there during the entire pandemic without any kind of maintenance. And when we came back, it was not in very good shape. But several of us have been working on getting it back into in fairly good condition as it is. It too has F10 optics. I know that it was mounted before 2011 because that's when I joined the club, but not long before that. It's primarily used for visual use as well, but I have found it to be a really, really good planetary imaging scope. So if anybody's interested in doing any kind of planetary imaging, I'd be love to have you come out and show me a few tricks with this thing. The long focal length, however, is not really ideal for deep sky photography. And I'm going to probably offer some trainings on it in the fall. It's a little finicky. Being an older scope, but it does work reasonably well 90% of the time. So this is some rough images that I took to the Gila Monster. Now, realize that if there are deficits in there, it's entirely my fault. I'm not an expert astrophotographer, but I have been fairly happy with the results that have come out of this particular scope with the planets. So this is a new addition that we're plugging. We just got this set up this month or last month. This is our new Losmandy mount with a couple different telescope options. One is an 85 millimeter Apo refractor. The other is a 127 millimeter ED refractor. The image on the left is a test image that we tried out with my equipment on the scope. It is not well processed at all. It's just to show that this thing actually does work. And we're very excited to get this going as a photography telescope, since we already have 2 good visual scopes on site. So again, the 2 scopes are an Explore Scientific 3-element ED 127 millimeter refractor and a Stellar View 4-element 85 millimeter refractor on a G11 mount. And ASIAir is available and compatible with the mount. It's using a PMC-8 control drive that's created by Explore Scientific. We're going to use this exclusively as a photographic scope, but it's great for training on basic astrophotography, and we hope to have it some kind of a setup where it's available for everybody by fall for anyone who's interested. And then my personal plug, which is SmartScopes, so going the other end for folks who are interested. We've had a lot of interest in these out here. I'm sure there's been some at CAC too, but as you can see, this is a couple months ago. We had 6 or 7 out on the site. They're real easy to set up because we don't need a pad for those. They can just be set up pretty much anywhere on the tables, on tripods, whatever. I've been really excited to see people bringing these out because I have one too, and I really enjoy it. This is an idea of some of the photography that comes out of it from the site. SmartScopes, as we talked about on a meeting we had on Monday, are not necessarily the most optimum photographic equipment out there, but if you are starting, they are a great way to get going. And this gives you an idea with noise reduction of what's possible at the site, given our light pollution conditions. So as I said at the beginning, we are up to a Bortle scale 5, but with some of the filters and filtering technology available, it's not as terrible as that might sound. So upcoming SmartScope events at TIMPA, I've tried to plug these a little bit in the newsletter. May 7th, we have a C-Star workshop, and then May 9th, there is a SmartScopes and Snacks potluck and SmartScope rally. You do not have to have a SmartScope or even be interested in SmartScopes, but it'd be great if you are. If you want to come out, we'd love to have you. We'll have some food, we'll have some fun, and that's our next big event out there. And I believe that's my whole presentation.
Now, usually we would ask for questions, but I'm going to ask you to hold your questions until the end of the dark sky presentations, if that's okay. We're going to go on to CAC and our Chicahua Astronomical Complex is going to start with former President Bill Lofquist. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4. Is it only 4 former presidents here tonight? Oh, May, you're in the back. 5 former presidents. Wow. The royalty is here this evening. Bill, are you ready? Would you come up and tell us anything you know about CAC? He might know a thing or two. Bill? Wow.
This one's ready to go. I dropped out of coming to TAAA meetings when the pandemic hit us. That was in 2021, I believe. So I'm very happy to be back here with some old friends, and I hope some new ones. I was president when we got things really going, and I want to talk with you a little bit about what we did, how we were thinking at the time. As many of you know, there had been a long history with TAAA, and TAAA was exceedingly active and was doing an awful lot. I began to get involved in it when I went up to Kitt Peak, and I picked up a brochure in the visitor center up there in about 1992, and I knew absolutely nothing about astronomy. I had an idea that it might be something interesting to delve into, And so I delved pretty deeply, I think, and before long developed a passion for using a Dob-type telescope. I would mention, because I've been so committed to Dobbs, that I guess I got so old I couldn't stand under a dark sky looking up with my balance beginning to decline, and I had to give my really nice 12.5-inch Dob away. I gave it to Carter. But I have not observed any since then because of that discrepancy. In other words, I'm an old man now. I turn 93 in another week or so. But to cap that, come June, Mary and I will have been married for 70 years. I'd like to leave these lights on if we might. There will be some slides, but I've got a little cheat sheet up here, and I suspect before I quit talking, I'll have to ask you to help me complete one of my sentences. This is plenty. Thank you. Just a little bit about my background, because I had to get oriented to the field of astronomy. I'm a social worker. I majored in sociology in college at the University of North Carolina, that other basketball school. And I did some graduate work in social work. And my career has been about what I call community development, which I think proved to be very applicable to helping CAC develop. So this is a story that's one of my favorite stories. My definition of community development is that it's an active process of creating conditions that promote well-being. And it doesn't take much imagination to show how that relates to the development of CAC. So I'll be making some comments which at least are my thoughts about how that definition can be applied to what's happening at CAC. I'm going to be mentioning a few individuals. John Kalis advised me not to do that because I might leave somebody out, but many, many people have been involved in what's happening at CAC. And part of my thought about community development is that you engage as many people as possible to get something done. And I'm interested in organizations and how organizations produce results. And it's been interesting to me to learn, once I did get involved, I began to hear that a lot of effort had been made to get a dark site. And I consider getting a dark site a community development challenge. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of my thoughts about how we used, if you'll pardon the expression, social science to get CAC going. And one of my thoughts is that social science is very real science. And I hope we can illustrate that just a little bit. Okay, not quite yet. Our first slide is up there. Yeah, let's go to the next one. This is a conceptual model. It looks very simple, and it is, but it's profoundly useful. And I hope the way I use it, if you're part of a family, or if you're part of an educational system, or a religious group, or have a job, or think about obeying the law, all of those institutions we've had to consider as CAC developed. This simple conceptual model, it's got an A, a B, the word indicators, and action steps. The A uses a very profound three-word sentence, which could be a question or it could be a statement. And the three words are what's happening now. And if you do an analysis of what's happening now, and you do a deep analysis of what's happening now, you can get some very good mileage out where you go from there. The condition A, I call it, is the current reality. And it seemed to me that the current reality back when I was president, there were some real issues within the club, as productive as it was, and it was very productive. There was some people who were upset with what was happening and with the fact that the club had never developed a dark site. I won't go into any detail about that. There are a lot of stories around about it. But condition A was that the club wanted and had wanted for 40-some years to develop a dark site, but for some reason it had never been developed, and I had a notion about that. Condition B is what you would like to have happen, or your goal. This is simple language that we use all the time. What kind of outcome did we want to develop? It occurred to me that one of the reasons that a dark site had not been developed, and I asked a lot of questions about this and talked with people who had been with the club and read what I could about the club, I never found any clear evidence that the club had ever developed a goal of having a dark site. There was a lot of desire for a dark site. Everybody wanted one, but why didn't it happen? So it seemed to me that the best thing we could do would be to create a goal for people to rally around. A goal, to be really effective, needs two dimensions. It needs a timeline and it needs an action line. So I asked the board of directors to set the first goal. This was in June of 2007. The first goal I recommended we start was that by June of 2008, the club will own property in an appropriate place. And to my thinking, just that simple goal really began to energize, and I'm going to tell you what began to happen within days. The second goal was that by June of 2008, the club will have developed a strategic plan for how to create the dark site. So we wanted a time and a kind of action. And so with those two goals, I think it's fair to say that a great deal of energy was unleashed within the club, and many people got involved in it. There are two other words that I think are important. Are the words process and structure. And from a social science perspective, the process is the dynamic, active involvement of people moving. And structure has to do with those givens, the concrete things. And one of the most important pieces of structure that we ran into immediately were the subdivision laws of the state of Arizona. And they began to determine what we had to do and how we could do it. So that's a good example, I think, of some of the concrete things we began to run into. So let's begin to talk about what's happening now in June of 2007. So if we could look at this using the language of the conceptual model, this cow standing in what became Perseus Drive. Let me see if I can. Some of you might recognize this post. That's at the corner of Perseus Drive and the next street that goes south down toward John Kalis's property. Here's a fence. This was a property line. The entrance to CAC is about, the entrance to CAC is about right about in there, I think. So keep our cow in mind as where we started to develop CAC. And I would ask you, how long does it take to get from that cow standing in what became Perseus Drive to what you see up there now? This picture was taken just a week or so ago, wasn't it, Ed? It's one of the latest. How do you get from condition A to condition B? And I don't know if that stirs thoughts in your mind about something having happened. One of the things we did when we started, and Keith Slotman was involved in this, I put together a little one-page form, a recommendation form that any TAAA member could go out and find a piece of property and fill this little form out. And within days, the club would have people out observing and looking at the site. So we had some structure in our process, and that was to get people involved in doing the study and coming up with ideas. We did a lot of that. It happened that on Friday night before that next board meeting, Paul and Kathy Anderson had done a star party for the library in Sunsites, which is not far from CAC. And we were at David Levy's house on Saturday of that night, and Paul and Kathy were there and were telling me about the dark sky in the town of Sunsites, and that would be a really interesting place to check things out, which we did. And early the next week, before the Wednesday board meeting, I had gotten an appointment with a realtor out in Sunsites, and she had told her what we wanted. She put together a list of 10 properties, and before the end of that week, or even before the board meeting actually, I was out in Cochise County looking at these properties, and I didn't like any of the first 9 that we saw, and it was about time for me to head home. And she said, well, I've got one more. It's a little bit east of here. I'd like to show it to you. And we passed a sign as we headed east, that said no services. And that gave me some heart. And we drove a little farther, and we came to this place that she had me to look at. And it was almost exactly where CAC is located now. It was right at, what's the name of the street there that heads Price Ranch Road? Exactly. Then we had created this form that people could fill out if they had a proposal. So Keith and I got together. You remember this, Keith? We went out there and we looked at the property. And Keith and I thought it looked very promising. So we set up a time for a number of TAAA members to go out. And the night we went out there, there was a quarter moon that was not going to set until 1 o'clock in the morning. But we had between 15 and 20 people. This was hardly, well, it was in the same month as we set the goals. So that much interest was beginning to mount already. Keith and Michael Turner, and there was a very active astro photographer, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. Dean Salmon. Thank you, Keith. Most of the 15 left about 10 o'clock at night, and Keith and Dean Salmon and Michael Turner and I, the three of them were planning to do some photography, and I had my Dob there. And we spent the rest of the night. The moon's set about 1 o'clock that morning. And I think we all were pretty impressed with what we were experiencing. So the report that that whole group came up with was very positive. And this was within 2 weeks after the goal was set. I am a firm believer in clear goals as major steps toward energizing a group to get results. And I think we really began to see that something new might be happening. Yeah. This is some of the computer work that John Kalis has done. I'm mentioning several people who were very involved, and I'll name as many people as I can because there really were a lot of people that were beginning to get involved. This is a great picture, I think, that sort of outlines the step-by-step development of what has happened. There's a phenomenon that I've learned about from my own experience that through the use of conceptual models and beginning to make things happen, there begin to develop what I call some unanticipated positive consequences. Things that you didn't plan for but begin to happen. And these unanticipated positive consequences began immediately. The first one was the organization of the Perseus Group, which, based on subdivision laws in the state of Arizona, you can't have more than 5 owners. But people in the Perseus Group began to talk with each other and came up with the idea of 4 of them purchasing the property. And the property we were looking at was a square 40-acre piece of property. And the Perseus Group pretty quickly began to organize itself. And I think by the end of that June even, it was beginning to take shape. So the first unanticipated positive consequence was that 4 members were going to prepare themselves to buy this 40-acre parcel, and each of them give 4 acres to the club, so the club didn't have to spend a penny on, except maybe for the attorney's fee, on getting the property. The club had an account of about $85,000 at that time. And I think most of us thought that we would have to put some of that money into the land, but that didn't happen. They could all go into the development of the property. So the Perseus group really was the first effort outside of the planning process to help make CAC happen. Another thing that happened, there was a guy named Wally Rogers who was fairly new to the club. I got to know him because he rode to each of our monthly meetings with us. Wally Rogers, unbeknownst to any of us, ordered about $40,000 worth of telescopes, which he gave to the club. That was the second of the unanticipated personal consequences that happened. And there are 2 other amazing ones that you're all familiar with. Okay, here's some of the inner workings that began to happen. This is the Perseus group. It includes John and Liz Kalis, Robert Crawford, who's receiving the dollar bill from Ken Shaver, who was the next president, and Sam Rua and Eric Karkashka. So the Perseus group made a major contribution to the development. Let's go to the next one. This group was also important. This is the planning group for the Cochise County, and we were in the process of preparing our application for a special use permit. And Robert Crawford wrote some of the detailed information in our application for the special use permit, and I added some of the programmatic stuff. The property was actually bought, I don't remember the exact time, but it was about October of that fall. Does that sound about right, John? So the goal was that we would have the property by June of 2008, but we got it, knew we were getting it in October of that fall, which is pretty quick. The other thing that we had to get was a special use permit, and we were working on that application. And we went before the Planning and Zoning Commission of Cochise County in February of 2008 and made a pitch to them, and they unanimously approved our special use permit. So we had achieved these 2 goals well beforehand. I think there's some merit to that. We had many people involved in the conversations about strategic planning. We also decided at that first board meeting that we would make the strategic planning group for this dark site an official part of the club. And it's changed membership. It's grown some, and people have come and go. But a kind of a symbol for me of this developing process that we were experiencing was our dining room table, because we were sitting around our dining room table with great deal of discussion and meetings of the strategic planning group. And this kept going. And in about 2015, the strategic planning group was continuing to meet, and John's master plan there shows the development of different parts of CAC as it was happening. And at that time, Mary and I decided that it was time for us to sell our house and move to a retirement community, which we did. And after we moved, or in moving, we took our dining room table with us and put it in our new apartment, and we continued our regular monthly meetings until the pandemic hit, as I mentioned. And my involvement in it stopped in 2021 because of the pandemic. So that takes the development of CAC, I hope, in a way for you. During these early months, the energy level has continued, and that's been exciting to see. Let's move ahead through the other pictures. Yeah, this is some of the infrastructure. The first time I met Bob Reynolds, I asked him, what attracted you to TAAA? And he told me one word. He said, infrastructure. So here we see it beginning to be developed. Next one. Here's a little more of the infrastructure development. And next. This is digging of the well. Next. This is the well house. Next. And the bathroom, our first building. Next. Here are the pads. Next. Here's the circle of concrete. And I think that's an 18-inch. Is it? Yeah. And next. This is the Wally Rogers telescope and roll-off roof. That was our first roll-off roof observatory. And that's Warren Hinsey. Next. This is a very important picture, I think, because these are all members of the surrounding community. And we reached out. We did a number of star parties in the schools of the area, and that was part of our getting to know people and letting them know that we were there. John gave many of those talks. Mike Magris, who's back there with a hat on just to the left of the telescope, he organized some of these classes. Next. Another group of young people. Next. In the Wally Rogers. Next. This was a recent one just a week or so ago, I believe Ed told me, at the Bob Reynolds go-to Dobb. And there's one more, I think. There's our little camper. And that's been a busy parking area for cars. So I hope this has given a little bit of an idea. I'm sorry about my voice, but it's aging along with the rest of me. So that's it.
So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to show you some of the current stuff that we got out of CAC. Probably just take 5 or 10 minutes, and then encourage you guys to for people to come out and enjoy the site. So let me get that share going. Yeah. Let's see. Hang on a minute. Let me get this. closed. Come on. Too many PowerPoints open. I got to get one of these closed. See, I just got to get the right one up. Okay, I think I'm there now. All right. Let me I'll get started here. So I'm Jim Knoll. I'm the current director of the site, and I was very fortunate taking over that a whole lot of hard work was done before me. So it was real easy to step into it and just kind of keep everything going. And as Bill mentioned, and several that are in the room here, we had a wonderful team that was involved with getting the site going. And I know a lot of you have been out to the site a lot, and it's a great site to have. And I think it's probably I would say one of the top 5 easily within the country of the amateur clubs. So what I want to do is just spend a few minutes kind of talking about what we have out there to hopefully encourage you to come out to CAC if you haven't been there yet. And this is a good overview. This is a slightly different angle than what Bill showed in his. But real quickly, this building right here, this is our newest addition. This is the BG Stinger Observatory that houses the DFM 32-inch classic Cassegrain that we picked up from Colorado 2 years ago. 2 years? Yeah, 2 years ago. And it resided in Warren Hensey's garage for a couple years while we had a great team build this and design this all in-house, the observatory, roll-off roof observatory. And you'll see a little close-up of that down the road here. And then we also just recently did 2 new buildings that house, this one on the left houses, half of it is a classroom. So we're able to do inside activities and talk astronomy and things like that out there. And then the other half of this building has 3 sleeping rooms, and then the one next to it has 7. So this one's called the Foley Institute. This one is the Mooney Learning Center. And then in between the newer part of the site and the original part, we have what's called the Stinger pads. And on here we have 4 different telescopes. I'm going to show you pictures of those here in a minute. And all these telescopes I talk about today, you can get trained to use. We're still in the development process for the 32-inch to figure out the procedures. But once we have that down, then we anticipate that members will be able to get trained on that as well. Bill talked a little bit about about Bob Reynolds and why he wanted to get involved with the astronomy complex. And you'll hear us talk, I'll talk CAC, but that's basically the Chicahua Astronomy Complex. And Bob decided he would donate a 40-inch Dobsonian that he had, and a 9-inch folded refractor. And then he also provided the funds to build a large warm room. So this is the Reynolds Mitchell Observatory. The original bathroom that Bill showed, that's this little triangle right here. That was the first building on the site. Right next to it is the Bill Lofquist Outdoor Learning Center, also the Ramada. We have some storage out here for telescopes, for personal telescopes. We have a total of 20 pads out here. There's 10 that we call public pads that members can reserve on an ongoing basis and bring their equipment out and set up. And then we have 10 pads that are called member pads, that members can do a long-term lease, and they have priority for these pads. But if we fill all these up, and you can see in this picture that they are all full, we can overflow if one of the members that has this lease isn't using their pad, will overflow to one of their pads. The big circle amphitheater pad that Bill showed in his presentation with the group on it, that's right here. In this container, we've got the 25-inch telescope that we're going to soon build a pad for. This is the Wally Rogers So this was the other original building with the observatory. And then we've got a tent camping area in here with actually a tent in it. RV parking over here that has expanded from originally 4 sites to now 7. And then up here at the top, we have 5 member observatories that are leased just similar to the pads. The observatories are remote capable, and they have members' personal telescopes in there, and they can remote into most of those and operate them from their home. So like this top one up here, and I'll show a better picture in a minute, but the top one is the largest. It has 3 telescopes in it, and the 2 members that primarily operate that, one lives in Phoenix, and the other one lives in New York City. And they're using it almost every night. And then we have a member that's got a big 41-inch Dob in here that he pulls out on this pad. Our site, one of the requirements that Bill and the team kind of looked at when they wanted to pick out a site was they wanted it not further than about an hour and a half from Tucson. And that's about what it takes probably from the eastern side of Tucson, takes about an hour and a half. From the western side, maybe 2 hours, but it's still a decent drive, and we can still get some good dark skies. CAC is a Bortle 2. It's a good Bortle 2. Sometimes it's even a weak Bortle 1, but it's certainly a good Bortle 2 sky out there. And I'll show you a little time lapse that'll show you that. I'm not going to go through this because Bill kind of talked to some of this, but they started the purchase in 2007. We did a lot of stuff. We expanded the pads. We got the 14-inch going. The Ramada was going in 2014 to 18, and the RMO, the Reynolds-Mitchell Observatory, was put in then. Here's a little close-up of the 10 pads with the members on there and members on the amphitheater as well. 19 to 23, we did the 2 sleeping quarters with the rooms. We put in some EV chargers. We put in the Stinger pad, and we did the leased member observatory. So that was a very busy time frame. And then in 22 to 25, we expanded the RV, did some more EV charging, did the BG Stinger Observatory with the 32-inch. And then this year, what we're looking at doing, and I'll show a picture of where that's going to be, is we're going to expand to a second roll-off, very similar to the Wally Rogers, honoring one of our longtime members, Dean Kettleson. It'll be the Dean Kettleson Observatory with another 14-inch telescope in there. It's the one that Dean used. Dean was also very much involved with the Mirror Lab and other activities right here on the U of A. And then we're going to do a pad for the Warren Henze 25-inch. So here's the Wally Rogers again that has the a roll-off roof and the 14-inch. And this one is very popular. A lot of members will use this one, and it's routinely scheduled. You can do both visual and imaging on here, so we have some of our astro imagers that like to use this one. And then the Reynolds-Mitchell Observatory. This is a picture of the Dob, the 40-inch Dob. It takes a little bit of a climb to get up to the eyepiece, but it's well worth the view. And then this is rather unique. It's a 9-inch folded refractor. There's, I think, only a couple of them in existence. The technician, I think it was a German company, but a technician wanted to try taking the refractor, cutting it in half, putting a mirror down here, and shortening it up. And it never took off, but Bob Reynolds happened to buy it, and so that's out at the site too. And this one's going to become, I think, pretty popular for members to use for personal observing. Here's a better picture of the 5 observatories, member leased observatories. You can see they're different sizes. This is the smallest one in the middle. I don't think he's remote capable, but I think the other ones are. And like I said, you're walking around the site at night, you'll hear the roofs opening up, and they're using them quite often. The Stinger pad in between the new buildings is the 4 roll-offs. And so in this one, we have an 18-inch Dob, which was also in that picture, one of the pictures that Bill showed around the circular pad, the amphitheater pad. That's still being used. And then we've got a 9 1/4 Celestron, 11-inch Celestron, and a 12-inch Meade in the 3 roll-off roof sheds here. And then the 4th shed is fixed right here, and you just pull the Dob out onto the pad. And again, members can get checked out to use all of these. And I talked about the new buildings we have. This is what the inside of one of the rooms looks like. 7 of the 10 rooms just have a set of bunk beds. Most of the time, it's just a single member that's in the bottom. But if you have a spouse or a youngster that can climb up to the second deck, you're more than welcome to put 2 in there. We have 3 of the rooms are large enough that have a second platform bed out here. So those we kind of consider the double rooms. So if you had a spouse or somebody that wants to come out that doesn't want to climb up here, you can rent one of those rooms. And the fees are very nominal. You can see also that there's no bedding. You bring all your own linen with you. But the rooms are very reasonable. And then we've got a classroom with some tables and chairs in there and a projector and a whiteboard that we can use for doing different projects and things like that. Here's a close-up of the Stinger Observatory with the 32-inch. Very nice telescope, very big telescope. We're in this process of getting it checked out, but we are going to actually do our first research project with it. It's starting to get the attention of some organizations that want to do some professional type research. And so we have a group coming out here Sunday. Several of us will be out at CAC for 3 or 4 nights. And we're going to do a double star kind of research project to split and catalog potential double stars using this telescope. So we'll hopefully start seeing this show up in different professional ones. Once it starts taking off, I'm hoping that we get more organizations that are interested in doing it. But this one will be available too for members to use down the road, either visually. We haven't determined the exact protocol yet of what we're going to do, but we'll probably start off visual and maybe we'll migrate to imaging, but we'll take a look at that. But it's a beautiful roll-off roof that was designed and built by several of our members, and they did just a fantastic job. So here's the 10 public pads again with the Raleigh Rogers. I mentioned we're going to do a Dean Kettleson Observatory right adjacent to it, so it's going to be right across the road. It'll look exactly like the Raleigh Rogers with another 14-inch scope in there that we'll have available. And then we have Warren's 25-inch Dob that's going to be on a similar pad like what we have for the 18-inch Dob, where it's going to be fixed. And we're planning right now to put that pad about where this vehicle is off of the amphitheater, and it'll be adjacent to it. So once, if you're going to use it, you just pull it right straight out onto this pad. And then, like I said, we've got an outdoor center here, a little ramada, tent camping area. And then we've recently, not too long ago, got a tractor to help maintain the site, which has been a godsend for doing weeds and other maintenance stuff around the site. And we are at 4,800 feet, so you have to be prepared for some cold weather. We do occasionally get snow. This was about 1.5 years ago. I don't think we got any this year, but last February, I think, is when this came down. And then this is a short time lapse done by Bob Rose, who's operating our camera back there, just to give you a sense of what the site looks like at night. You can see this was taken kind of in the tent area, so where the red lights are in front, that's the 10 public pads. And then you'll occasionally see a tent right over here off to the side. So that's looking towards the east. And this is just a standard time lapse, so it's not a long exposure or anything. So that's what the Milky Way looks like out there. So if you haven't been out, got to come out and join us. We have a lot of fun out there. And then here comes the old sun. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview. Our next, we usually do our CAC weekends around the new moon. Next one's coming up here in a couple weeks, April 17th and 18th. Bill showed a quick kind of a little group that John was talking to for our public star party. And we're actually we do those twice a year, and we've got the next one for that is coming up on April 11th. The last few we've probably had 70 or so people out there. It's primarily open to our neighbors around the site because we want for them to understand why we want dark skies and not a lot of yard lights. And sometimes if we can invite one of them that has a pesky yard light, we can they'll look at it and go, ooh, that's kind of ugly. and maybe do something about it. So, but it is also open to club members if you guys want to come out and see the site then, and we also open it up to Tucson too. But it's primarily for the folks out at around Cochise, but they get a lot of use out of it. So anyway, that's what the current site looks like. If you need to email me or anything on the site, that's the email address. And then you can also look up more information about the site under on the Tucson, on our club website. CAC is under resources and then observing sites. So with that, we can open it up to questions. I may have to switch back and forth on the slides because we want to do both TIMPA and CAC. We'll start here in the room and go from there. Connor's got one.
Hi, my name is Dave Lilly. I've been a member of the club for 3 or 4 years, and I was interested in the member lease sites at the complex. Do any of those ever come up or become available?
Yeah, so we do. In fact, we're building, and I really didn't mention that when we're doing the Dean Kettleson Observatory, we're going to build 4 new member pads. But right now, we kind of have a waiting list for those. So it's ideal is if you think you might want to do one of those pads in the near future, shoot me an email, and we'll get you on the list. And that way, because they do turn over. There's the members that decide all of a sudden they don't, if they don't want to use it, then they can relinquish the site, and then you can the pad, and then you can.
And you can remote in from home to those?
So the member pads, no. So the member pads are the 10 pads that are just the pads. The observatories, those are we've only had those going for now for probably about 1.5 years. All the members, none of those have turned over yet. There's no indication that anybody's going to do that. But yeah, I'm sure that at some point in time they will be, and we need to run a list of waiting for those as well. Those are a little more expensive. The way the leases work for the observatories is you're going to put in a significant portion of the cost that was to build those things, but you'll get some of that back, or a lot of that back, depending upon how long you have the lease with the club.
Okay.
The pads are pretty simple. They're like $2,500 to $3,000 to get into the lease there, but the observatories are more. Connor, did you have a question? And anybody
More
on
of a
Zoom,
question for Stephen, but just because you didn't mention it, with the 2 refractors that were added at TIMPA, since those are dedicated for photography, I assume that members will have to bring their own cameras for those, correct? Because we don't have one at the site for those.
We do not currently have one at the site, no. But that doesn't mean that we will never have one at the site. We'll
Right,
see.
but
At the moment, yes.
when you're
yes,
advertising
correct.
it, if you want to use them, you'll have to bring your own
Your own
cameras
cameras,
to use
yes.
them until we can get one out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, are we done in the room? Any other, one more in the room? Right down here.
Oh, yeah, just a quick question for TIMPA. I understand reservations are required. Just wondering how late those can be made. Can they be same day, day before?
Honestly, if you want to send in the reservation an hour beforehand, that's great. Not everybody does. I love it if they did. But if you just want to come out too and just let me know a couple hours in advance, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, I watch my email and they come in that way. So anytime you like, just let me know.
Real quick, Stephen, do we also want to mention the Slack group that we made for TIMPA?
Oh, there is a Slack group that we put together for TIMPA who are regular users. That's a little more complicated because you have to be on my email list first. But if that's of interest, let me know after the meeting.
And that's a good point. There is a reservation system for CAC as well, and all that's outlined on the website for both sites. So you can just check that out there too as well. Anything else in the room? All right, we had one on, or maybe a couple on Zoom. First one is, are there fees charged for groups to use the 32-inch telescope? So we haven't worked out that process yet. Right now, no, but down the road, because the group that we're doing starting Sunday is actually a community college, and we're actually some of the students that are going to be participating with it to kind of help them get going. So, you know, if it's a school or something like that, probably no fees. But if we get to a professional organization or something like that, then we may end up doing some fees. Oh. Oh, okay. Hopefully it's going out. Let me make sure it's still, yeah, it's still going out. All right, and then the other question on Zoom, oh, okay, yeah, just, let's see. It's been a few months since I've been out there. Is there any road construction on I-10 delaying getting there? Oh, yeah. It's been probably about, I don't know, a year they've been working on this bridge. It's at milepost 292. If you try to go through there after lunchtime, you can anticipate a 30 to 1 hour delay. Sometimes it backs up about 7 miles and it goes slow. It's usually been pretty good in the morning though, so I encourage people to come out then. And for some reason, coming back the other direction towards Tucson, there's not much of a delay. Microphone, who's got mics? And let's see, I think that was it on Zoom. So after Paul talks, then we'll go to.
Okay, I wanted to add something to that. Pardon? Oh, testing, 1, 2. Okay. I wanted to add something to that regarding I-10 with that traffic tie up there. I would suggest everybody taking Marsh Station Road to I-10. And then once you're east of Marsh Station, the congestion is starting to move after that. But get on off of, you can get it off of Colossal Cave Road there. Just it's essentially a frontage road starting east of Colossal Cave Road, and then it ends at I-10 at near milepost 291.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, just, plan a little extra time. Terry, was there anything on social media?
There was a question about the construction,
Oh.
so we have covered that. And then there was there's a comment about how amazing the sites are. And then also, how do we get training for the club's telescopes?
So that again is on the website. That's the easiest way. Joe Jacoby's our training officer. And so if you go where I showed you on the website to the CAC webpage, you scroll down, you'll see a training section, and then there you can request training on a particular telescope, and Joe will get you set up. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you to the speakers, and thank you to everyone who helps make our sites work. Each of those sites has a management group that meets regularly and takes care of maintenance, keeping the place so that we've got instruments that work and sites that have got their gopher holes filled in, and it's like having a house, There's always something that's going wrong this week that you've got to pay attention to, and we've got some great management teams keeping those sites working well. So thank you to Jim and his team and Stephen and his. All right. We're going to go to the heavens again. Each quarter, we are blessed with a description of what's available in the sky by Dr. Mary Turner. And Mary is getting wired up and will be joining us here.
It's on. That worked. Okay, that close. So now, that'll speak Mac again. Just hit that. Okay. And don't worry, folks, I've been asked to not talk very long. I'm not sure if I'm physically or emotionally capable of that, but I will keep. Hey, you're lucky he opened the right file. The other one, my plenary talk from IODC, was like an hour and 20 minutes. History of optics starting, like 5,000 years ago. Personally, I found it interesting, but that's okay. But as you can see, I've also cut down my list a little bit to try to keep myself from digressing too much, but I get to talk about Leo and I can digress on that a lot. And again, I seriously will try to keep it to about 20 minutes, whether I'm finished or not. And Terry, it's okay if you tell me, okay? So I like talking about constellations, and Leo is a good one for this time of year. And there are all sorts of neat pictures of Leo, so I grabbed a couple of them. Obviously, most of my things are from the sky, but I love the historical ones as well, sort of trying to figure out, yeah, you can put this nice lion on here, but does it really look like a lion? Again, this one probably is a reasonable. I'm still going to give like Scorpius the highest score, and do I actually look like what I claim to be? Leo's not too far off. Leo is actually well named because the Latin word for lion happens to be Leo, so don't call him Leo the lion because that is redundant. My mother was an English teacher. Most of you know that by now. Leo is important for a lot of reasons. First off, as long as you don't live on Antarctica, sometime during the year you will see Leo. There are very few constellations. Well, there's a group of constellations, but not all of them are like that. Obviously, we're well familiar with Leo because it is one of the zodiacal constellations, and not that we necessarily are concerned with the astrology aspects, but remember, astrology is simply ancient astronomy before we had scientific evidence to refute some of their hypotheses. But it's also along the celestial equator, relative to the Earth's equator, which also makes it highly visible and visible over most of the globe, at least at some point of the year, as I said. Leo the lion is actually a lion in many cultures. So obviously the Greek and Romans and Mesopotamians and the precursor Sumerians, etc. Because as we know, the Mesopotamians took the stuff from the Babylonians and the Sumerians, and then the Greeks took it over, and then the Romans took it over and just changed the names for whatever reason. So you expect some similarity between those cultures, but also the Turks, Persians, Syrians, Indians, and by this I mean the Asian subcontinent. Native Americans were not familiar with the creature that we would call the lion, therefore they would not have had such a constellation or such a grouping of stars. Leo, of course, we're familiar that it has a little bit of mythology associated with it, but a little bit more than we might think about. One we most commonly think about is the Greek story of Heracles, which, of course, to confuse everyone, the Romans turned into Hercules. At least those names are relatively close. Normally the names are really, really different between the two. Hercules, and I'm going to stick to Hercules from now on, was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman. We all know about Zeus and his activities, proclivities. Hercules also had a half-brother or possibly a cousin, Eurystheus, and say that 3 times fast. He was the king of Tiryns, which was part of Mycenae. I'm sorry, you moved your hand and I thought you were raising it. Trying to look through my glasses. But suffice it to say, although Hera and Zeus were married in the Greek god sort of way, they weren't really that friendly with each other, probably due to Zeus's basic behavior forms. Let's just leave it at that. But basically, since Hercules was Zeus's son and not Hera's, they played Eurystheus and Hercules against each other as pawns in their little domestic strife. Hera maybe took it a little bit too far. She induced a spell of insanity in Hercules. During this stage, he killed his wife and children. I know, we're not laughing, just the whole, the subcontext. And obviously, once he did that, he was released from this insanity and he realized what he had done and was, of course, significantly anguished, as one would hope. But Hercules and his family lived in Mycenae, so he needed to ask the forgiveness of the king, who happened to be the half-brother who hated his guts, to put it mildly, but I have brothers as well. So, and basically the punishment for Hercules was that he had to complete 12 little tasks, simple little endeavors. The first of which was to bring to the king the hide or the skin of the Nemean lion. Okay? Now, remember, the king really doesn't want Hercules to earn absolution by completing these 12 little tasks, trials. He'd sort of like Hercules to just disappear permanently somewhere during this process. So to help that happen, the king neglected to mention to Hercules that the hide of the lion was impervious to man-made weapons. So, you could have an axe, you could have arrows, you could have whatever. It was not going to damage the hide of the lion. And obviously, if you can't get something in there to sort of get to the heart or whatever, you're going to have difficulty killing that lion. Okay? Minor detail, but it did make things a little bit more difficult. Hercules, who was known for his skill with the bow and arrow, finds the lion, empties an entire quiver of arrows into the lion, and they all sort of bounce off. And how many of you have pets? Okay. Now, if you were to sit and throw something at your pet, would they be happy? Like throwing a little ping pong ball at a kitten or something like that. No, they'd probably get a little bit angry and sort of take it out on you. Now, when Bellatrix gets a little bit upset with me, she's not going to hurt too much as long as I've clipped her claws. When the Nemean lion gets a little bit upset, it's a little bit more difficult. But Hercules, hey, he's got to find a way to kill this lion because, you sort of got to kill it before you can skin it so you can bring the skin to the king. This is just one of those things that has to happen. So what he does is he knows he can't kill it, but for some reason he decides to hit it on the head with a club, and he didn't kill it, didn't damage the skin, but it did sort of render the lion somewhat unconscious temporarily. And during that period of time, Hercules got close enough and actually choked it to death because his hands were not made of stone or metal or one of those things that the skin was impervious to. So he was able to kill the lion. And then, of course, he needs to remove the skin. But again, how do you get the skin off? Well, he simply took one of the claws of the lion and basically. Hey, I haven't been mic'd in a while. But I do love these gender neutral mics. I don't have as much difficulty as I used to have. So he basically took the claws of the lion and scratched the lion's skin, and the lion's claws were able to get its own skin, sort of like we can scratch ourselves bloody at times, same thing. And so he was able to remove the pelt from the lion and then brings it back to to show the king, who was not exactly pleased to see him, but he did complete the trial. And remember, the trial said that he had to bring the pelt to the king. King was not an English graduate, okay? He didn't understand the nuances of language, and he didn't say that Hercules had to give him the pelt, only that he had to bring it. So Hercules brought it, showed it to him, and then left with it, and that became his cloak, or because it was impenetrable. So if he's got the lion's skin on, he's now going to be impervious to any man-made weapon. So basically, for those of you who didn't know it, Hercules effectively had the first suit of armor. It was the skin of the lion. Okay. Now, of course, Leo the lion is in the sky, but we know that typically it's demigods and things like that that get moved up into the sky. And, the Nemean lion, where did he get in there? Okay, probably because of Hera. Okay, so we know that Zeus had certain tendencies and proclivities. Well, it turns out Hera did too. And she had her own little string of children that were not in any way related to Zeus. And it turns out most of them were sort of not normal, shall we say. Okay. So he may have been one of the sons or a child, one of the children of either a child of Hera, or might even have been one of Hera's childs itself. But most of the children of Typhon, who was a child of Hera, were, shall we say, somewhat in the monster scale. We've talked about a few of them over the years that I've been doing this. So basically, Hera sent a lion to Nemea to live. And it turns out that very close to this region of Mycenae was a shrine to Zeus. Okay? Zeus was sort of arrogant. You didn't want Zeus to be upset with you. So basically, if you wanted Zeus not to be upset with you, you would go to this temple and you would pay homage to him and give him gifts, whatever. But you had to walk through the area where the lion lived in order to reach that temple. So basically the reason the lion was in Nemea was basically making it very, very difficult for anyone to pay homage to Zeus. It was, again, another way of Hera getting revenge. Okay? And because of that, and because she might have let some member of her family get killed in the first place, because she was responsible for telling the king to send Hercules on these quests, Hera then put the lion up in the sky to live among the stars. Okay? A lion is also of significant importance to the Egyptians. Now, Egyptians also like cats, but I would digress if I were to talk about cats. In ancient Egypt, the constellation was aligned to the summer solstice, and Regulus was thought to provide some extra warmth during that time of year. Of course, we now all know that it's not the visible light that gives us heat, it's the infrared light, but hey, that was, what, about 1750 that they discovered that? Rising of the constellation also coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile. Without the flooding of the Nile, you didn't have agriculture. Without agriculture, you wouldn't have an Egyptian civilization. Well, when the Nile is going to flood, the lions come because the lions know it's going to flood because they understand the temperature cycles as well. So actually looking out your window and seeing lions in ancient Egypt wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was an indicator that the floods were about to come. Personally, I'd not like to look out my window and see lions, but I'm also not an ancient Egyptian. What can I say? But one of the other fascinating stories related to this grouping of stars is the poet Ovid wrote a story about Pyramus and Thisbe in his work Metamorphosis. So, you know, a book quite long that had many, many different poems in it. But there was this one, and let me see if you've ever heard this before. There were two teenage neighbors in Babylon. Okay, let's just call it Babylon for now. Because of their age, because of family rivalries, you know, Hatfield-McCoy type sort of things, all of the parents involved forbade them to have any contact with each other. Okay, but there was a crack in the wall between their houses, and so between that they could talk to each other. And they made a plan to meet by a mulberry bush with white berries. Okay, sort of never heard this story before, right? Thisbe, the girl, arrived first. She came across a lion, and it was all bloody because it had just eaten whatever its last meal was. She sees a lion covered with blood, so she, was reasonably wits around her, she decided to leave and leave quickly. Okay, and in the meantime, she lost the veil that she was wearing. Lion was curious, picked it up, was looking it over. We're humanizing the lion. But unfortunately, the blood dripped off onto the veil. And then Pyramus arrives, and he sees the bloody veil, and he assumes that Thisbe has been killed by the beast. Lion's already gone. All he sees is this bloody veil. And he, of course, makes that most logical decision that life was no longer worth living. So he fell on his sword, coating the mulberry bush in blood. Thisbe returns, finds Pyramus dead, sings songs of lament, takes the sword, and does the same thing. So now you know how come mulberry bushes nowadays have red fruit. And you also know that Shakespeare, as illiterate as Shakespeare was, might actually have written Romeo and Juliet because he had the inspiration from history. And if you like the story, I highly recommend the Butterfly Lover's Concerto. There are no words to it, but it's a Chinese concerto, violin concerto. It's beautiful, based on the same story. Okay, so, I still have a couple more minutes. Do you want me to shut up? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Only 10 minutes? Jupiter or sombrero? We'll take a vote. Jupiter? Okay, we'll go with Jupiter. Right now, Jupiter is reasonably well aligned. It's going to be heading out by the end of the quarter, but for now, we can get some nice views of Jupiter. And I've been noticing over the last couple of weeks, once the temperatures got below 100 and whatever it was, that we actually haven't had a lot of clouds at night. We just had a lot of dust. So I didn't put anything in here that you couldn't see. Okay, sometimes I put in things that required a little effort. I figured our sky conditions were such that that wouldn't be fair. And Jupiter is indeed something that's fair game with reasonable seeing conditions. Okay, and this is obviously a NASA Hubble image from about 2020. And it combines multiple images, colorizing some of the infrared. We clearly see the bands, see the great red spot, etc. Nice, really nice image. And I will admit, you're not going to see that with your personal scope, but hey, you can try. Okay, And as I said, it's heading west, but I did put the location in the RAN deck for April 17th at about 7:30 p.m. And of course, it's going to be moving off by the end of the quarter. And I had to put those first two numbers in there. New data. Radius at the equator is 71,472.6 plus or minus 0.3 kilometers. That is based on Juno data from this year. For reference, that's about 8 kilometers smaller than they thought it was. And I'm just looking at those numbers and it's like, okay. And at the polar radius is significantly smaller, 66,852.6, again, plus or minus 0.3 kilometers, which is about sort of flattened down about 24 kilometers more than was previously estimated. And I started to read about the electromagnetic techniques they were doing to make these measurements. It's fascinating, but I'm going to have to read it 2 or 3 more times to fully understand it. It's approximately 778.6 billion kilometers from the sun. It spins around every 9.9 hours. So it's huge and it's moving really, really quickly. However, it takes it about almost 12 years to move around the sun. Total mass is about 318 times that of the Earth, but you could put 1,300 Earths inside the volume of Jupiter. Why? Because the Earth is mostly rock and Jupiter isn't. That's why they call it a gas giant. Density of Jupiter is about 1.326 grams per centimeter cubed. Water is 1, rock is about 5. So again, very little to Jupiter other than gas. Obviously, there is some heavy metal simply because we are we're not initial generation, based on initial generation stars and previous. Gravity is 23.3 meters per second squared. We're 9.8. Mean temperature is a cozy minus 110 degrees Celsius. Number of moons is up to 95. That's 26 more than it was in 2020. And by moon, it simply means a rock, that's a generic term, that is in orbit around the planet. Yes, some of the new ones they're finding are in the 1 kilometer size. Better technology allows us to find littler things. But yeah, it's up to 95. Now, for those of you who are impressed, don't be. Saturn is up to, is it 285? Yeah. Also with like 75 in the last 5 years. Yeah. Don't worry, you're not going to see any of those, but we still only have one. But our one is pretty much bigger than most of the rest of theirs. Okay, Jupiter is obviously the largest planet in our solar system. It's the largest of those gas giants outside of Mars. It's mostly metallic hydrogen layer under sufficient pressure that the hydrogen has liquefied. There is a hot core that may even be on the solid type side of some a diffusion of different heavy metals. Again, our solar system was formed from the explosions of previous stars, which means there were some heavy elements, but mostly hydrogen and a little bit of other stuff. But if you could get to Jupiter, and if you could survive the temperature, and if you could survive the pressure down towards the core, you just go through because there is no core. There's nothing solid for you to stand on. Okay. The 4 visible moons are the Galilean moons. Carrie's going to make me shut up shortly, so I won't talk about any papal issues with this. Lots of them have been found by telescopes like in Hawaii, but more and more of them are being seen by things like Hubble, Webb, and other space-based astronomy. No matter, I don't care how good your seeing is at CAC or other places, you're not going to see 1 kilometer moons around Jupiter from Earth. Just not going to happen. Jupiter does have a ring structure. It's much less reflective than Saturn's, but it does have this structure. And obviously lots of interesting features. Probably the giant or the great red spot is one of the most interesting. And it's simply, if you will, a Jovian hurricane. But obviously it doesn't have rain, it just has the pressure and all of this compressed gas. Galileo saw the great red spot in his observations with that little telescope he had. So if Galileo could see it with that little telescope of his, you should be able to see it with a big telescope of yours. The great red spot changes quite a bit over time, both color changes as well as visibility. There were a few years back. I won't try to put a number on these because, as Bill and I were discussing earlier this evening, we're not good at judging time anymore. But the red spot almost looked like it disappeared. Now it's quite a bit back. And this is just an isolated picture from NASA. You'll notice that it does swirl around. It's a storm. The period of that swirling is about 6 days. Okay, here are some Cassini pictures. The stripes are because, again, Jupiter is many, many times larger than the Earth, but its period of rotation is significantly faster. So and it's not circular. Remember, the radius at the top is totally different by 18 kilometers different. Well, no, 18 kilometers less than they thought it was. But there is this difference in the 2 radial values, which causes these different pressure differentials, which result in very, very strong winds in excess of 400 kilometers per hour. And even Oklahoma doesn't come close to that. Okay, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto are the 4 visible moons. And there are some pictures of them. And this is sort of one of the other moons, but that's a whole lot more than a couple of kilometers now. And I wasn't able to get a good picture showing all of them. So, okay, so thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mary. Mary takes instructions well. Yes, yes, that reputation, of course. Any questions for Mary before she leaves for her seat? Okay. All right. Well, if you have any questions about Jupiter, we have Dr. Kokoschka with us tonight. Eric, are you going to give us a planet report? Okay.
And Mary, according to Google, it is 285 for Saturn. And we know Google doesn't lie.
Okay, the planets this month. The brightest planet Venus is getting better and better visible at dusk. It sets just barely after the end of twilight, but it will get further and further away from the sun. By the end of the month, it reaches Aldebaran in Taurus. And then the next bright planet much higher up is Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, so just a couple of days ago, it was 75 degrees from Venus, and by the end it will be 42 degrees. So Venus is catching up fast with Jupiter. Jupiter is moving very slowly to Castor Pollux, and right now it's highest right at sunset, so 81 degrees high at sunset. And then once Jupiter sets around midnight or so, we don't have any planet up in the morning sky until just dawn, where Mercury rises, and it's still visible till the 18th, but it's not very high, not very easily visible. Around 5:30 is the best time to watch for it straight east. And Saturn is coming back in the morning sky after the 24th of April, but it still will be low at dawn, and will need to get well to May before it becomes easily visible. From the two far planets, Uranus and Neptune, only Uranus is visible. It's still 4 degrees south of the Pleiades, so it can be easily found, but then it will just get too low towards the end of the month. And the last day where it's really somewhat easy to find is April 23rd. At that evening, Venus will pass right next to it. So Uranus will be 0.8 degrees south of Venus. So if you point your binoculars at Venus, you'll see that's the brightest object just a little bit to the south of it. Then the moon is going to new moon in mid-month or so, and then, well, actually the 17th. And the first side of the moon will be then the next evening on the 18th, 1.5 days after new moon, when it will be very slim. And on that evening, it will be somewhat close to Venus, not directly next to it, but in the vicinity. And then, yeah, the moon still gets to very high northern and southern declinations. And so the next time it gets to very far northern declination is on the 20th. So that's 2 days later after it is past Venus. And that's then 86 degrees high in the afternoon at 3:30. So you could see the crescent very high in the sky. And on that day, there's also some unique, pretty unique meeting of 3 planets. All the 3 planets are within a 3-degree circle, and that's Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. The only problem is they are pretty close to the sun, and all are not quite naked eye visible. So you really would need to know to look for with binoculars. And then you see all of them, they are very similar magnitudes, all within a 3-degree circle. If you would be on the southern hemisphere, you could see it easily in naked eye because there the ecliptic in the morning is going straight up. That would be visible on the 20th around 5:30 a.m. Then we also have a little meteor shower, the Lyrids, around the 22nd. They are visible late evening and into the morning sky. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
When it returned, and if so, where can we get the ephemerity to know where and when to look?
I don't know anything about that, but you would need to look at some NASA website where they are not helpful. Well, if, like with satellites, you can see them to distance of around 1,000 kilometers or a few thousand. And so if Artemis comes down anywhere close to Western North America, and it's just evening or morning, so it's illuminated by the sun, then it would be visible. But to me, it seems unlikely.
Well, thank you for that question, Brad. We don't know if Artemis will be visible, but if anybody does determine that there's a way, let us know. We'll broadcast that. I think with that report, we'll say goodbye to our social media friends. Thank you for joining us. And we will move on to internal club business.